This boy was fighting the ice dragon. He broke free by slicing through the frozen chains while the dragon screamed at him to give up. But the boss didn't know who John was. John started looting the tower after everyone else. As a result, he lost his abilities and his secret lessons. He gave up learning multiple skills and focused on mastering just one, the thrust. Through relentless training and fierce battles, after defeating over 50 million monsters with this single technique, his thrust became faster, more precise, and more powerful. What had started as a simple movement had transformed into the deadliest attack. And since it wasn't an official skill, he never grew tired of it. But to understand how it all began, we have to go back in time. Birds are resting on a telephone pole under a sunny sky. Meanwhile, a young man is eating a bag of chips while the television announces the news. Noticing that the package was already open, he dropped its contents on the ground. A little girl approached and asked him if he was the thief who ate her snack. Suddenly, the news reported an earthquake near Seoul. Experts warned that the tremors were gradually increasing in intensity. Inside the store, people stared at the street in terror, trying to understand what was happening. Without warning, a massive structure of earth and stone erupted from across the street. The impact hurled enormous boulders into the air. Moments later, the store windows shattered in the shockwave. Amid the chaos and dust, the little girl wept in despair. Lights flickered as someone shouted that an ambulance had already been called for the injured. Covered in dust, the young man scooped the child into his arms and asked if she was all right. She calls him Mr. Thief, but the girl glares at him, and he looks away, perplexed. Around them, the store is nothing but ruins, and people lie among the rubble. Under the English night sky, a mysterious tower appears. In Japan, similar structures spring up in several cities, including Seoul. Seized by fear, people begin to call them nightmare towers. Soon, a message congratulates the chosen ones who will become tower walkers and save the world. Someone asks what it means to be a walker and accepts the call. Suddenly, a young man is startled by a bright screen that appears before him. All those who accept the call are transported inside the towers to fight. Items and abilities appear via a video game-like interface, but they quickly realize it's no game when they see warnings of danger in the sky. A projection reveals an impending cosmic impact and shows what is happening outside. Workers are securing the base of the immense tower that has appeared in the city. One of them looks up and asks what it is. When they spot someone at the top of the structure, they shout for someone to call for help. From the heavens above, a dark wing slowly unfurls. A horned demon roars, leading a horde of creatures that advance at its command. Soon, a siren blares across the city, announcing the tower's impact, an event that triggers the monster's escape from the towers. Explosions devastate the city as people flee in despair. War tanks advance, firing at the emerging threats. Amid the rubble, a green monster with gigantic tusks roars, ready for battle. Dark, winged creatures swoop down on it in the heart of the destruction. A third of the world's population perishes, and cities are nothing but ruins. Inside the tower, helpless, they watch the tragedy unfold. Soon, the message calling them to become tower walkers and save the world resurfaces. The chosen ones realize the weight of the mission entrusted to them. They decide that if they can conquer the tower, they can end this nightmare. Endowed with special powers and abilities, they become humanity's last hope. Determined, the walkers advance into the depths of the tower. Battling colossal monsters, they fight to prevent the annihilation of humanity. A man touches the ice wall, marking the boundary of what the world has become. Faced with this obstacle, a walker suggests breaking it to clear a path. Before anyone can respond, a club slams against the wall, shattering the ice in one blow. On the other side, a man notices something on the ground and alerts his leader. Approaching, they discover a glowing stone and wonder about its meaning. A screen appears, identifying the object as the regression stone, capable of sending them back to the past. Their memories intact, Sin, the leader of the Tower Walkers, takes the stone and announces he will test it. As he breaks the artifact, an intense light erupts from his hand. He stares at the flash as the energy consumes him completely. The others see the light expand, filling the entire space. Soon, the glow disappears and everyone wonders if he's gone. One of them questions whether Sin can even return since he should still exist in the present. Sakamoto, a former science teacher, adjusts his glasses and says he understands what happened. He explains that Sin did indeed return to the past, but their timelines diverged. Drawing on theories of the multiverse and parallel universes, he describes the splitting of the worlds. The moment Sin returned, his world and theirs were separated forever. Turning to the perplexed group, Sakamoto asserts a certainty. Shin's return to the past, he claims, changes nothing in their present. He explains that the objects in the tower have never lied about their functions. Sakamoto brandishes a fragment of the stone, suggesting it might open a gateway to other timelines. He concludes that the objects in this tower surpass all limits of imagination. Suddenly, a storm of red lightning begins to form in the sky. Without warning, a second tower impact strikes the outside world. Faced with the advancing monsters, the walkers are forced to make a decision. More creatures emerge from the tower, determined to eradicate the last vestiges of humanity. Confronted with the chaos, they must choose between using the regression stone to return to the past or staying here and fighting to the bitter end. Suddenly, a giant tentacled monster charges the group. The creature seizes one of the walkers and crushes him as he screams for help. Wounded and trapped, two survivors decide to use their stones, accepting their fate. More walkers vanish in beams of light, leaving one completely alone. One of the last apologizes, saying there is no hope left, and disappears in a flash. The young man falls to his knees, exhausted and with injured feet. The tentacled monster lunges at him, its mouth full of teeth, but a mysterious figure suddenly appears, crossing two daggers before the beast. In the blink of an eye, the newcomer fells the creature with a single blow. Landing softly on the ground, he observes the defeated enemy. With a slight smile, he turns to the young man and asks if he is all right. Still breathless, the young man looks in the direction the others have fled. In the distance, he sees the mysterious man joining a group of warriors, commenting that everyone else has retreated. The man thanks the young man for staying until the end. Now hope rests in the hands of those who resisted the temptation of the regression stone. They have not returned to the past. They have chosen to fight for the present. The group's leader then orders everyone to advance, and together they continue on their way, the last defenders of humanity. Lying amidst the rubble, a man struggles to breathe. His frozen face gazes at the devastated landscape around him. Stretched out among the rocks, he wonders where it all went wrong. In a distant memory, someone utters a solemn oath. Soon after, a warrior charges a gigantic monster. Defying his opponent, his companion runs and shouts to John to attack. Leaping into the air, he throws himself at the creature. With his partner, he prepares a combined attack. They both grasp the same sword to deliver the fatal blow. With a swift movement, the blade fells the creature. Amidst the fallen enemies, he asks if there are any casualties. His partner reassures him, no, the wounded will soon recover. Meanwhile, another group of walkers gathers their composure, confident they can reach the top floor. They wave and smile, full of hope. John and his friend return the greeting, but something catches his eye. Before him appear the swordworm's bane forged to defeat a dragon. Brandishing this new weapon, he agrees with young Juan that they will reach their goal. Smiling, he firmly believes they will make it to the summit. But now he remembers how under control everything seemed. On the 98th floor, he finds himself facing a skeletal dragon ready to breathe fire around him. His exhausted companions lie amidst the flames. Turning abruptly, he tries to react to the attack. The monster strikes with incredible force. Its paw slams into the ground, creating a crater. Thrown by the impact, he crashes heavily to the ground. He then understands that all their efforts have been in vain. Images of his friends, their shared moments, and the tower flash through his mind. His demented face reflects utter despair. As the dragon prepares another attack, he wonders if he will be defeated in such a pitiful way. The creature's flames blind him. From the sky, the dragon sees a small winged figure rushing toward him. Yunwin, armed with two swords, charges, spinning and striking the monster. Leaping, he strikes its head, which lets out a thunderous roar. The blow's tear cracks in the beast's rocky hide. Yunwan shouts to John to rouse himself from his stupor. He landed on the dragon's back in the scorching heat. Using it as a springboard, he leaped high into the air, away from the creature. He shouted that he couldn't defeat it alone. Suddenly, the dragon unleashed a beam of energy from its eye. Jaewon watched helplessly. Yunwan was struck full force and crashed onto the beast. In despair, John screamed his friend's name. The dragon's tail slammed into the ground, shaking everything around them. Stomping the earth repeatedly, the creature let out a triumphant roar. Soon after, a devastating explosion struck Jaewon. Rising from the rubble, he stared into space. His face covered in dust, he gritted his teeth and prepared for battle. Running toward the dragon, he mustered his last reserves of strength. Suddenly, its eye glowed with an eerie light. Wielding an energy sword, he confronted the beast without hesitation. He then noticed a strange light emanating from a nearby rock. Leaping forward, he headed toward the glow. Resolutely, he faced the dragon, determined to end it. The creature stared at him, ready to attack. Leaping onto the monster's head, he struck it with his luminous blade. The colossal body began to melt slowly. In seconds, the dragon dissolved into a pool of lava. Coughing from exhaustion, Jaewon called out to Yunwon so they could leave. But when he turned around, he found his friend lying motionless on the ground. A monstrous hand closed amidst the debris. The truth hit him hard, and he wondered who he truly was. Fallen Yan apologized, a final smile. Jaewon gazed at his friend, still amidst the rubble. Yan Hwan Kim was known for his infectious optimism. That's why the walkers called him the Smiling Knight. But at that moment, the Smiling Knight's smile lost its brilliance. Jaewon turned to him and told him to leave. He begged his friend to leave before he changed his mind. From a distance, he watched Yan Hwan lying motionless. The warrior slowly walked away from the battlefield. In a weak voice, he asked Jaewon if he had finally understood the truth. Pointing to a simple stone, the monster called it pathetic. Climbing the steps, the young man declared that Jaewon was stronger than he had thought. He was convinced that if anyone could reach the top of the tower, it would be him. He repeated that if anyone could do it, it would be Jaewon. With conviction, he affirmed that the world was lucky to have him as a defender. Then he disappeared, leaving behind only fallen leaves. Jaewon approached the door through which his friend had departed. A golden leaf gently landed in his hand. Memories of his smiling companions flooded back to him. Turning around, he decided to continue on his way. Suddenly, the doors to the upper floor opened before him. An intense light streamed from the newly formed passage. His face marked by battles, he stared silently at the glow. Stepping through the portal, he discovered a vast landscape covered in ice and snow. A fierce blizzard enveloped everything around him. Jaewon advanced, battling the icy wind. Ice projectiles exploded near him, blasting craters in the ground. Suddenly, a wall of crystals erupted from the ground. The force of the explosion threw him backward. A gigantic ice monster emerged from the darkness and sneered, asking if the rat had finally given up. Layers of ice began to form on the creature's hand. Jaewon remained unfazed, saying no, and taunted the monster, asking if it was tired of playing games. Another powerful attack struck him full force. In a cavern, he tried to catch his breath. Wounded, he slid to the ground and leaned against the icy wall. Outside, the monster sniffs the air, searching for him. Jaewon hears footsteps and thinks back to the 10 years he spent trapped on the 99th floor. He remembers that climbing the previous floor had been difficult, but this one is the most dangerous. He pours a potion on his frozen arm and watches the ice slowly melt. Leaning on his healed arm, he stands. As the footsteps draw closer, he remembers the guardian of this floor, the ice dragon, whose breath is almost unbearable. He thinks he would have been defeated long ago were it not for the equipment left behind by the others. He thinks of the sword from the 85th floor and the ice demon armor Yan Hwan gave him. Then he looks at his wrist. The Fire King's bracelet glows faintly. The memory of Earth returns to him. He remembers her sitting beside him, apologizing with a gentle smile. Jaewon clenches his fist, regretting that he wasn't strong enough. The image of a stained map and his defeat flashes through his mind. A voice snaps him back to reality. A hooded man calls him by name and apologizes for his distraction. The blacksmith asks if he'll try again. Jaewon confirms, certain he'll succeed this time. He takes a sip from his mug and declares he's ready to win. Jade, the blacksmith of Adipose, smiles and says, "Good." He remembers the founding of the city on the 50th floor after the fall of the Guardians. Back then, the place teemed with afflicted people, but no one gave up. The priests formed rescue teams to save the wounded. The blacksmiths, for their part, forged weapons and armor free of charge in the name of humanity. Jaewon stares at the workshop sign, lost in thought. He notices that Jay seems to be the last blacksmith in the topos. Jay replies that it doesn't change anything since he's his an LY customer and mentions the ore shortage. He explains that the supply was regular until a few months ago, but Jaewon doesn't seem surprised. The young man observes that the tower is almost deserted. He realizes he's lost track of time and that at least 10 impacts have occurred since then. He mentions that no one answers the tower's call, not even on the first floor. Jaewon concludes that there's probably no one left. The blacksmith pauses, observing the glowing metal. Then he asks Jaewon if he's noticed anything strange during his last visits. At these words, a memory resurfaces for the young man. He remembers where they found the first regression stone. It bore an inscription, a tower within a tower. A nightmare within a nightmare, but he had simply scratched his head, thinking it was just a scribble, and replied that he hadn't seen anything new. Jay then reveals that Ms. Hyern disappeared a few days ago. Shortly after, In-Sin Huang remarks that, since no one ages, there are only 2 possible explanations for this disappearance. The first is that they went back in time. The memory of a wounded, smiling Yan Hwan flashes through his mind. The second is that they simply climbed down from the tower. Jaewon remembers that Hyern from the potion shop was one of the few who still offered help in this topos. The blacksmith continues to hammer the burning metal in silence. Meanwhile, Jaewon remains seated, watching the glow of the forge. Suddenly, he calls to him. He asks Jawan to share his skills with him. The blacksmith stops abruptly, motionless, his hammer raised. Jawan faces the ice dragon again, this time with a slight smile. The creature asks the human if he has finally finished his little game of hide-and-seek. It then declares that no human in the tower's history has ever attempted to cross the 99th floor alone, but the dragon admits that Jawan is a remarkable human, which makes him laugh. He reflects that his last compliment will come from a monster, not another man. The creature regrets having to defeat him, but says there is no way to spare him. Jawan tells it not to be so sure, preparing his sword. The dragon warns him about his precious armor. It reveals that it is already beginning to crack. It accuses him of arrogance and declares that it is tired of these games. Then the ice dragon focuses its energy and fires a devastating beam directly at Jawan. A colossal explosion of energy and ice sweeps across the battlefield. Soon, the shockwave destroys everything in its path. Pinned to the ground by a gigantic ice spike, Jawan is unable to move. The ice monster stares at him, asking if he's ready to give up. It coldly declares that the boy can fight all he wants, nothing will change. His hands begin to freeze as the dragon declares that he will be completely alone. The creature adds that he will be miserable, surrounded by visions of his companions. The monster taunts him, ordering him to snap out of his hallucinations. Hurt, Jawan simply retorts that he talks too much. With a surge of strength, the boy breaks free, shattering the ice prison that held him captive. He charges, unleashing a flurry of attacks. The dragon sneers, asking him if piercing is all he knows how to do. The creature orders him to give up, stating that it will never succumb to such pathetic tactics. Jawan reflects that he began his ascent of the tower too late, missing out on secret skills and lessons. That's why he decided to abandon all other techniques and focus on just one, piercing. He remembers his grueling training, relentlessly piercing his enemies. After 50 million strikes, he became the master of this technique among his companions. At a certain point, he noticed a change in his piercings. His movements became faster, more precise, and more devastating. His technique evolved, reaching the power of a secret skill he could now use at will. Yet the fight against the dragon remains arduous. He must strike hundreds of times just to scratch the creature's armor. Suddenly, the dragon's roar echoes as energy concentrates in his chest. Jawan realizes too late that he won't be able to dodge the attack. His eyes widen as the blow approaches. An intense light exploded precisely where he had attacked. In that instant, he recognized the same light. It was identical to the one he had seen on the 98th floor. Seizing the opportunity, he gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. Channeling all his energy, he concentrated it into a single devastating blow. The impact struck the dragon full force, throwing it backward with colossal force. Sliding on the ice, Jawan landed, gasping for breath. Wounded, he faced the monster, which furiously cursed at him. A fissure opened on its chest, and the creature demanded to know how he dared. But Jawan lamented that the blow hadn't been powerful enough to defeat it in one fell swoop. The dragon's wings unfurled in a sweeping motion, warning him not to get a big head after a single blow. Then, the creature took F. Light vowing to annihilate him once and for all. A beam of energy erupted from its maw with a roar. Immediately afterward, a hail of ice projectiles rained down on Jawan from the sky. Leaping nimbly, he dodged the aerial attack. Exhausted and breathless, he realized he couldn't win like this. Taking advantage of an opening, he hid behind a barrier of ice. From above, the dragon watched him and lamented his fate. Scornfully, it remarked that if there had been 10 others like him, they might have had a chance. But Jawan simply ordered it to be quiet. The monster concluded that it was a pity his companions had been deceived by the nightmare stone. Dodging another blow, Jawan wondered what this stone could be. Suddenly, the dragon swooped down and attacked him with its razor-sharp claws. With a swift leap, he escaped the impact, which shook the ground. The creature's furious gaze follows him through the ice. Suddenly, a door appears behind Jawan. On impulse, he steps through it, letting out a sigh of relief. He realizes that if that fatal blow had struck him, he would have been defeated. The words about the nightmare stone echo endlessly in his mind. Exhausted, he collapses to the ground, gasping for breath. He then reflects on the mystery of the stone the dragon mentioned. 5 years pass in this icy, impassive landscape. Finally, the defeated ice dragon collapses, cracking the ground on impact. Notifications pop up before him, announcing a new title and reaching the maximum level. Sighing, he ignores the messages. Perched atop the defeated monster's head, he grumbles at the absurd number of pop-ups. Approaching the lifeless body, he asks what exactly these nightmare stones are, but the vanquished creature shudders and whispers one last time that it already knows the answer. She asserts that Jawan will find what he seeks. From a dark energy emerges a weapon, while the creature reveals that the answers lie on the top floor. Picking up the object, he examines its shape and wonders if it is a sword or a dagger. The dark energy begins to bubble and spread across the frozen floor. Soon, a colossal dark doorway appears before him. The number 100 glows on the portal, revealing that he has finally reached the top floor. Determined to discover what lies beyond, he decides to enter. He approaches the portal and plunges into the darkness. The dark energy rises in distorted shapes. Symbols float in the air and align to form the words "Control Room." Jaewon emerges from the dark liquid and carefully observes his new surroundings. The reflection in his eye forms a strange pattern as he tries to understand where he is. All around him, countless floating screens project scenes of the tower from different angles. Staring fixedly, he wonders if this is what the tower looks like now. The images reveal the call of the tower and the city of Atopos. A voice booms, noting that he arrived quite quickly. Instinctively, he turns on his guard and ready to react, but the voice reassures him, explaining that it had forgotten to relay an important announcement. It then complains that the system looks modern, even though it's old and cumbersome to use. A notification pops up, congratulating him on being the first in World 294 to complete the tutorial. His eyes widen at the unexpected message. Shocked, he wonders what it means. In the darkness and chaos, he stares at the screen and mentally repeats the word tutorial. This revelation leaves him speechless. On the frozen ground, a voice remarks that he seems very shaken. Another voice advises him not to let the news overwhelm him. Suddenly, the ground trembles and the surrounding liquid begins to boil. From the darkness emerges a shadowy figure, warning him not to let his emotions overwhelm him. In an enigmatic tone, it adds that it might already be too late. Nevertheless, it tries to console him, telling him that he did very well for a mere human. Then the entity notices something unusual. Jaewon remains unperturbed, impassive in the face of the growing chaos. His determined gaze pierces the darkness before him. The creature observes him and notes that he has recovered faster than expected. Turning around, Jaewon faces the figure and asks who it is. The being apologizes for not introducing itself sooner, explaining that it was delighted that someone had finally arrived alone. He then reveals his name, Mephistopheles, a demon and the master of the Tower of Nightmares, which he has just defeated. Jaewon asks if the real game begins now, since everything that has happened so far has only been a tutorial. Mistas praises his perceptiveness, but says he wants to show him something first. With a gesture, beams of light pierce the darkness. With a snap of his fingers, the demon projects a scene from the past where perplexed people are watching what appears to be a game. Jaewon stares at the vision, intrigued by the glow of the Door of Light. A memory appears, showing Soil agreeing to join the group. On this occasion, the scene shows his companions reunited, smiling at the sight of each other again. Regretfully, the demon remarks that he will never see all those dear faces again. Finally, he excitedly points to the memory of a fierce battle about to begin. One of his former comrades calls out to him amidst the chaos of the fighting. The creature recounts that at the time, no one imagined what would happen. She adds that no one knew it would all end so tragically. Meisto confides that she was deeply moved upon seeing this scene again, which illustrates Yunwon's final defeat. She then asks the young man how he feels reliving his sadness, anger, and regret. With a cruel smile, the demon announces that he is granting him a second chance. He offers Jaewon the opportunity to start the game over from the beginning. He asks him if the offer doesn't seem tempting. He explains that in his world, getting a second chance while keeping all one's memories intact only happens in movies. Jaewon thinks to himself that this might not be the end. He believed he could save the world by climbing the tower. He remembers the invitation that chose him to become an explorer of the tower and protect humanity. Suddenly, he realizes that it was all a mistake from the start. In reality, there was no way to stop the tower's impact. Their only option was to keep climbing relentlessly. Saving humanity was their only hope, but Mephisto confidently asserts that he already understands this. Firmly, Jaewon declares that he will not return to the past. The demon glares at him. A suppressed laugh escapes him. Soon, the creature bursts into a mocking, loud laugh. Between laughs, she asks him if he persists in dwelling on the past. In a curt tone, she is perfectly clear. No object in this tower, nor indeed in the entire kingdom, can send him back in time. Jaewon confronts her, remembering that they had found a regression stone in the tower. Suddenly, her eyes widen in astonishment. The ice dragon's words about the nightmare stone echo in her mind. Yun Pier Tom devant lui tandis quelladamon remarque qu'une petite correction est impose. Mephistophel révèle quel objet trouvé n'aidait pas Yun Pier de regression, mais Yun Pier des cauchemars. Il explique calmement que ce qui est ont utilisé ne sont pas retournés dans le passé. Ils ont simplement été prisonniers d'un rêve. D'un ton amusé, il admet en avoir jamais imaginé voir une espèce aussi obsédée par le retour au passé. Il ajoute ensuite que les humains sont vraiment uniques à cet égard. John acquiesce d'une voix basse, disant que c'est peut-être vrai. Mephistos lui demande alors s'il est prêt à commencer le jeu principal. L'écran du tutorial apparaît, le félicitant et lui demandant s'il souhaite continuer. Mais le daemon el avertit qu'il n'y s'agit que d'un nouveau départ. Tout en el assurant qu'il fera certainement le choix rationnel, John appuie sur le bouton non. Surprise, le daemon le fixe et le jeune homme le remercie de lui avoir enfin permis de découvrir la vérité sur la tour. Les écrans du système commencent à bouger, laissant Mephistos complètement abasourdi. Parmi les distorsions, une d'elles montre que la tour du cauchemar, également appelée la forteresse du regret, pige dans un rêve tous ceux qui répondent à son appel. John déclare qu'il était déjà piégé dans un rêve créé par la tour elle-même. Alors, Mephistos le faudrait du regard et lui demande si qu'il compte faire maintenant. D'un regard déterminé, Jowan déclare qu'il le vaincra et qu'il passera ensuite à l'aide suivante. Mais Mistel affirme qu'il n'y a pas d'aide suivante, et le jeune homme rhétor qu'il n'y le croit plus. Le daemon lui demande s'il est insatisfait de la récompense pour avoir terminé le tutorial. En marchant sur une ombre au sol, son ton change. Puis après, la créature adopte une posture arrogante et se moque de la situation. Mephistel lui offre tout ce qu'il désire, un objet, une compétence secrète, tout ce qu'il veut. Jowan répond qu'il n'a besoin de rien de tout cela. Le daemon insiste, lui demandant s'il n'y veut pas retourner dans son ancien monde. En claquant des doigts, il révèle que puisque la tour en était qu'un rêve, il n'y a jamais eu d'impact réel. Perplexe, J1 voit un souvenir remonter à la surface, un couple coincé dans les embouteillages. Un autre souvenir montre ses amis se disputant à propos de billets de cinéma qu'ils ont oublié d'acter. Il se souvient ensuite de voir couru dans un parc et de voir remarqué quelque chose d'étrange dans le ciel. Une violente rafale de vent le frappe de plein fouet. Riant, la créature déclare qu'elle commence enfin à comprendre la vérité. Mistel révèle que personne n'a été blessé et lui demande s'il est surpris. D'un air cynique, il commente que, connaissant l'importance que les humains accordent à la famille, cela ne peut être que bonne nouvelle. La créature claque alors des doigts, avant avoir failli oublier de lui montrer le plus important. Une vie. War s'inquiète de l'aide et des patients et une autre répond qu'ils restent inconscients. Approchant d'un des lits, Jowan aperçoit son propre corps attendu là. Surprise, il se demande si c'est bien lui. Le daemon explique alors que, tandis que des décennies se sont écoulées ici, sur un mois est écoulé dans le monde réel. La créature assure qu'il n'y pourra jamais la vaincre. Elle ajoute que le fait que le saper est plus grand que celui qui saper les humains et les dragons, mais Jowan rican demandant si c'est tout. Dégainant son épée, il prévient qu'il a déjà vaincu un dragon. Mephistel le trait d'arrogant pour une telle audace. Without hesitation, the young man lunges forward and thrusts. Back at the workshop, the door opens slowly. Wounded and holding potions, Jowan calls for Jay, announcing his arrival. He calls out again, but the workshop seems empty and abandoned. Elsewhere, a hammer strikes incandescent metal. Now Jaywan is at the forge, focused and covered in sweat. He reflects on trying to defeat the demon every day without even managing to scratch it. He doesn't understand why the creature won't defeat him, yet he also remains standing. Determined, he vows to keep trying for as many days or years as it takes. Mephistopheles thinks he needs to remain calm. He watches the screens and remembers he must not harm Jaywan as he has a special product meant for sale. While eating, he reflects that he has never seen a similar case in all his years as a cultivator. The idea that cultivators refine products in 2 stages comes to mind, allowing them to adapt to the great realm. In the first stage, the best products are chosen during the tutorial game, like seeds. The second stage is like watering these seeds as true maturation begins in the main game. Annoyed, the demon wonders how a product dares to refuse passage to the next phase. He then considers whether he should just neutralize him since it wouldn't affect his soul. Even so, he worries that the soul might be damaged for being too powerful. Jaywan figures it was worth waiting for the enemy to become desperate and decides to ask a question. Mephistopheles reveals that the universe is not limited to a single dimension. But the young man surprises him by saying he already knows, explaining that on Earth, they also have the multiverse theory. The creature then explains that the universe has a main dimension, the great realm surrounded by countless peripheral worlds. It continues saying that Earth or World 294 is one of these lesser planets. The inhabitants of these worlds become products by obtaining items and increasing their stats inside the tower. Then the demon reveals that he and others of his kind are there to adjust the walkers in the game. Jan faces him and demands to know the reason for all this. Mephistel replies that it's hard to say and comments that this might not be the question he really wants to ask. Snapping his fingers, he changes the scenery. The creature faces him and asks if what he really wants to know isn't why of all worlds, the tower was summoned in his. Demon taunts him, asking if he isn't curious why all of this is happening to his kind. He then reveals that his world was chosen by mere coincidence. Jowen just ends the conversation saying that's enough as the image of a destroyed teddy bear appears before him. Still, he insists on knowing why the demon is managing this tower of nightmares. Mephistel seems surprised by the question. The young man presses him, wanting to know what he gets out of it, and the demon replies that it's volunteer work. Trying to cover, he comments that even demons enjoy doing volunteer work. He makes up a story about one of his companions helping rejected walkers in a place called Paradise. Suddenly, a lingo message appears behind him. The message from his master orders him not to harm Jaewon, and the demon asks if he believes him now, but Jaewon simply replies that it's all just a load of nonsense. Jaewon remembers the moment his status window showed all his stats were maxed out. The memory takes him to an ice-covered landscape where he confirmed he'd reached his limit. Even injured, he drank a potion to try and recover. Soon after, he looked at the screen and saw all his skills were maxed. But despite that, he still couldn't defeat the dark creature. Then he was thrown violently, landing hard in the snow. Lying there, he wondered if maxed-out stats were still not enough for a human to beat a demon. He then began to suspect the problem was with the world system itself. Suddenly, a strange image flashed in his mind. Startled, he felt a weird sensation run through his body. His eyes widened as he began to understand what was really happening. Moving forward, he realized everything around him might just be an illusion. He reached out and touched one of the golden particles floating in the air. He closed his fingers around it, and the glow intensified. He watched the particles shift from smooth apes to irregular cubes, taking on different structures. In that instant, he understood those particles were the fundamental matter of this world. Soon after, the message from Mephistel's master vanished into thin air. Back in reality, Jaewon questioned the story about volunteer work. He asked who the masters were, and the demon seemed excited by his sudden interest. Meadowful explained that the masters rule the great realm where those who complete the main game end up. The creature then mentioned a group recommendation, leaving the young man confused. With a smile, it claimed his future would depend on the master he chose. Getting closer, Mephistel swore on his honor to help him find a great master as long as he followed his orders. But he whispered this would only happen if John chose to play the main game of his own free will. Jan compared him to an insurance salesman, but the creature denied the resemblance. Finally, the young man agreed to his terms, and a kind of contract appeared in the air. He firmly declared he would leave that place in exactly 10 days. 9 days later, he was fighting countless skeletons. Meanwhile, Mephistel watched him from a couch, complaining that he was just trying to show off. The demon lamented that he was so close to convincing him and blamed the ones who had tricked him into buying the tower. Pounding the sofa, he yelled that it was all those sneaky individuals' fault. Mephistel recalled buying the tower from a specialist demon, only to find out it was a first-generation item. He thought about how newer towers let you stop the tutorial without damaging the product, unlike his. In the old tower, the game couldn't be stopped without the product's consent, and Jaewon had refused to give it. Sunk into the couch, the demon complained that this is what he gets for being poor, but at least the tower still worked. Back in the present, he sighed in relief that everything would be over the next day. A status window popped up with a new message, offering Jaewon the option to end the tutorial and start the main game. Mephistel asked if he had memorized all the files sent, and the young man confirmed. The demon then told him to go ahead and press the accept button. Overcome with emotion, he confessed he waited so long for this moment he was almost moved to tears. But Jaewon pressed the other button and a blast of golden energy filled the area. Shocked, Mephistel asked what he thought he was doing. Using the particles, John materialized a golden sword in front of him. He gripped the weapon tightly and asked if the demon still hadn't figured it out. With a determined look, he prepared to show him what he would do from now on. He moved forward, declaring he would keep attacking the demon. He explained that ever since he started seeing the particles, his strikes felt different. Every time he tried to hit the creature, he felt like something was out of place. It was as if a new kind of sense was awakening inside him. Then a completely new perception dawned on him. He attacked again, and this time the blow passed through the shadowy form. Surprised, he wondered if this was the feeling of being truly alive. Suddenly, Mephistopheles summoned the black ironwood plant from the 91st floor. He admitted he'd never met anyone like Jaywin, and that perhaps they should have done this from the start. Then he asked if the young man didn't agree. The branches wrapped around Jaywin as the creature taunted him, stating he couldn't end the game without its consent. Mephistel acknowledged he was right, but revealed he had given up on getting that consent a long time ago. Trapped, Jaywin asked why the demon assumed the tutorial would last forever. He then revealed that the game automatically ends if 100 days pass after the tutorial's completion. Mephistel declared this meant Jaywin would stay right there until it was time to play the main game. Calling him by his true name, Jaywin addressed him as Beastrine. He revealed that in the great realm he's known as the Trickster. He then detailed that the creature was 784 years old, had been through 128 worlds, and had cultivated countless species, leaving the demon stunned. He accused him of planning to hand him over to the Reaper, the Master of Darkness. Terrified, Mephistopheles demanded to know who he really was. A golden message glowed in the air, revealing one of his old pleas to the Master. With a smile, Jaywin declared he was the very product the demon had been cultivating for decades. A moment later, a massive explosion of energy freed him from the dark plant's restraints. Jaywin charges forward at high speed, wielding an energy sword. The blow passes through Maestel's shadowy form. Surprise washes over the creature at the sudden attack. Then the impact hits something invisible, sending the demon flying backward. Mephistopheles lands hard some distance away. He stares at his own trembling hand, unable to believe what just happened. Then he starts to suspect something. An energy sword forms in his hand. He wonders if Jaywin is a super-adapted player. Jaywin stares back shrouded in an intense golden aura. He remembers the day he reached the 100th floor. Back then, he wondered if the tower was also just a dream. He even considered the possibility that the demon couldn't defeat him. He remembered asking himself countless times if his stats were truly too low to win. The world's structure began to fragment, showing signs of collapse. All his doubts returned as he stared at the demon's secret messages. When there was nothing left to question, he charged forward, sword in hand. It was then that Jaywin finally understood the true meaning of a decisive strike. He unleashes a devastating attack that breaks through the demon's defenses. Mephistel glares at him with fury amidst the rubble. He activates a link and his body begins to transform. A message announces that the synchronization limit has been temporarily suspended as the demon takes on a monstrous form. The creature warns that it will no longer hold back and demands his surrender. It attacks with multiple blades, but Gia blocks the blow, though he still gets hit. The demon recognizes that he has reached the second stage of adaptation that calls him a mere human. In a final attack, Mephistopheles strikes him hard with spikes, screaming that he can never win. Fallen and weakened, Jaywin wonders if this is really the end. He gets up, ignoring the impact, and continues the fight without stopping. The blows pile up until they force the demon to defend against a storm of attacks. The creature warns him that in the end he'll have to play the main game and is just wearing himself out for nothing. But after a long series of strikes, Jaywin surpasses his human limits and watches as all the rules crumble before his eyes. After suspecting and finally understanding the world around him, everything made sense. Finally, he had escaped what the world had defined for him. He felt truly human and began to understand. All the things that previously made no sense to him began to take shape. He realized, for example, that a line of energy worked like a link. Connecting the demon directly to the tower, the connection became clear. Jaywin then charges forward and attacks the energy link with his sword. Surprised, Mephistel reacts as he sees the young man sever the connection. Screaming, the creature claims this is more than just adaptation. A golden energy hits him head-on, and he wonders how it's possible. Crackling, Jaywin's sword responds to the new power, surprising the demon. The young man lunges forward and delivers a devastating blow to the dark creature. The attack hits him squarely, sending him flying backward with great force. Amidst the debris, Jaywin demands that he listen carefully, and the demon wonders if he has awakened. Jaywin declares that human beings are not merchandise for demons. He states they are not products to be evaluated and priced by ridiculous standards. Then the young man says he will no longer cooperate with his game. He announces he will destroy this place, and he will proceed to the next floor as he intends to climb to the top. He guarantees that when he gets there, he will finally see it. The end of the world the demons created, and his information window goes completely dark as the structure around them trembles. Mephistel begs him to stop. Desperate, the creature pleads with him not to do it. Then the demon screams that there is no next floor, but Juwon simply replies that there is. He explains that he isn't just being stubborn. The young man remembers finding enigmatic messages on several floors of the tower. In one of them, he discovered that the towers are just imitations of the nightmare at the top of the Tree of Illusion. He concludes that those messages were left by Muak, the creator of the Nightmare Tower. A description reveals that the Nightmare Tower is the second creation of Muak, the demon of dreams. Jaewon says they are at the roots of the Tree of Illusion, and if there are roots, there must be a trunk. Pointing upward, he states that the way out is through the ceiling. The young man gathers a large amount of energy in his hand. Then he hurls the energy upward, destroying the tower as Mel screams in despair. The system displays a calculation failure and announces that the game was not completed. A final message confirms the tutorial has ended, and the scene shifts to a jungle. In the new location, Jaewon clenches his fist tightly. Walking along a path, he says he has finally found what he was looking for. Roaring through the trees, a multi-headed creature displays its fury. Suddenly, Juwon finds himself surrounded by a pack of monstrous wolves. One of them leaps to attack, but the blow is intercepted mid-air with a swift movement. Turning sideways, he assesses the rest of the pack. Soon, a much larger monster charges toward him. Jaewon understands a light blow won't be enough to defeat it. Striking with force, he delivers a precise blow and fells the creature. Seizing the opportunity, he removes one of the fallen monster's horns. Standing up again, he remarks that the monsters in his place are weak. From the shadows, a group of insectoid humanoids appears, startled to see a human. The creature's eyes glow with irritation. The leader points and shouts about the beast's precious five-pointed horn. Even with his suspicion active, Jaewon realizes he doesn't understand their language structure. Holding up the horn, he asks if this is what they want and proposes a deal to find out where he is. Without answering, one of the creatures lunges with a swift strike. Jaewon dodges and warns it not to try that again or it will be its end. With his sword raised, he blocks the next attack and prepares to fight. A short time later, he is sitting on the defeated enemy. Pressing his blade against the creature, he demands to know where he is, but it replies in its incomprehensible tongue. Losing his patience, he neutralizes the creature and removes its antenna. Among the defeated enemies, he demands it speak in a way he can understand. The creature only swears it will have its revenge. Then the creature falls silent, determined not to reveal anything. Jaewon notes that although they are weak, they have more willpower than he thought. His gaze falls upon the removed antenna. Sticking them into the ground, he remains silent for a moment. Unable to get any information, he searches a fallen pouch and wonders if there's anything useful inside. Inside, he finds a dimensional backpack that works as an inventory. Perfect since he lost access to the system interface. Remembering Mephistel, he calls him a liar for saying the system would work in other dimensions. Still, he realizes he can see item information with his suspicion and analyzes the stones of fallen souls. He notices that all the creatures carry one of these stones and wonders if they were jewelers. Regardless, he concludes the stones must be valuable and stores them in the bag. Jaewon decides to leave the rest of the items behind as they take up too much space. Suddenly, his sword begins to vibrate again. His gaze turns to the blade, which emits a strange hum. Twisting his wrist, he swings the sword and fires a blade of energy at the trees. Shortly after, he chews on one of the stones he had collected. As he eats, he wonders what the stone tastes like. Among the branches, he spots a fallen scroll and wonders if it's a map. Upon opening it, he discovers it's a map of the Tree of Illusion with an area marked as Chaos. Crumpling the paper, he realizes that information wasn't in the files sent by the demon. The focus returns to the dense, overgrown jungle. From the shadows, monstrous creatures emerge from the woods, growling. Suddenly, someone lands hard on the ground, followed by other figures. A red-haired woman surveys the scene with a confident smile. Soon, a strike grazes a man with dreadlocks. Apologizing, she says her dagger slipped and he decides to hunt elsewhere. Annoyed, the man decides to ignore the incident because she's pretty until a colleague interrupts him. The group then notices a threat approaching from behind the woman. Dread sets in as they see she's provoked a two-horned beast. Pursued, the woman runs, yelling for the monster to stay away from them. From a clifftop, Jaewon watches as the group tries to regroup. He notes the girl seems to be the strongest, but concludes they'll all be defeated because they don't work as a team. Silently, he wonders how they managed to beat the Tower of Nightmares. The man with dreadlocks activates his Fire King's breath skill, and the woman says she'll help him. But the next blow hits him head-on. Once again, she apologizes, and he furious questions her. Indignantly, the woman retorts that she was just trying to help. As they argue, the beast prepares to attack him, and a companion yells for him to be careful. Leaping from the cliff, Jaewon intervenes in the fight. With a swift strike, his blade neutralizes the creature. The man with dreadlocks is covered in dust. The impact knocks the beast down. Jawan lands on the defeated monster. Shocked, the man asks who he is. The red-haired woman asks if he minds if they keep the defeated monster. With a nod, Jawan allows it and she celebrates, but he asks if the horns are valuable. One of the adventurers explains it takes 10 people to take one down, and Jawan concludes that monsters with more horns are stronger. The woman's suspicious gaze narrows on him. Approaching him, she demands to know who he is. She states there are almost no adapted players in Chaos and asks where he came from. Jawan is silent for a moment. He just repeats the word chaos as if asking himself. Then he faces the group and directly asks what chaos is. Surprised, the woman stares at him in complete astonishment. One of the men from the group approaches and asks if his name is John. He then asks if the young man is just passing THR. And he confirms with a nod. The man finds this odd and asks if he also doesn't speak the local language. He explains that it's extremely rare for someone to have a language barrier in this place. The red-haired woman returns to the subject and asks if he's sure about the monster's body. He again gives them permission to take it. Her eyes narrow, suspicious of his claim that he's just passing through. She then recalls that Jawan defeated the 2 war-horned beast with a single blow without using any skills. She also remembers trying to use her own skills without success. She then realizes that her detection ability doesn't work on him. The system returns an error, and she notices his mono level is as low as an unadapted player's. Intrigued, she approaches and says she wants to ask a question. With a firm gaze, she states that there are almost no adapted players in Chaos capable of defeating a beast like that with a single blow. She demands to know who he is and where he came from, but he just stares at her in silence. A faint smile appears as he repeats the word chaos. The woman gets angry, accusing him of toying with her and questioning why he'd say something so absurd. She asks if he's having trouble understanding her and offers to speak more slowly. Jawan calmly replies that he understands her perfectly and reflects on her question. His mind drifts back to a time when his relationships and identity on Earth lost all meaning upon entering the tower. Instead, he made new friends and created new memories alongside his companions, but they all vanished like a mirage when the tutorial ended. He knows they are still somewhere on Earth, but if the reward was to start over with his memories intact, then they probably don't remember him or what they experienced in the tower. That's why he claims to have lost his memory. The woman is surprised and excitedly asks if he has amnesia. Floating slightly in the air, she says she doesn't believe him, but he denies saying that. She stares at him and asks if he's a warrior from the abyss, just as his sword begins to vibrate. Gripping the hilt, he tells the weapon to stop the noise. Suddenly, the blade transforms into a creature, startling the woman. Her eyes wide, she recognizes the sword as a spirit weapon. The creature begins to consume the swords and equipment scattered on the ground, leading her to conclude that he isn't strong. He just has a powerful weapon. Her companions murmur among themselves, commenting that the weapon is eating the equipment and wondering why he's showing it off to everyone. As the group watches him, Jawan asks his weapon if it's satisfied and if it can return to its sheath. The red-haired woman, annoyed, complains that he ruined her mission, claiming she could have defeated the monster on her own. Suddenly, a brilliant idea pops into her mind. Approaching him, she says she won't ask any more questions but wants to propose something related to a pushing skill. With a sly smile, she asks if he's interested in hearing her proposal. After explaining about chaos, the girl, who introduces herself as Minnow, reveals that her companions are bandits from the Red Fox clan. Jawan observes the group and understands that deep down she wants him to defeat them all for her. With a subtle warning, Minnow asks him not to stare at them too much, as they'll soon come after him, too. As night falls, the man with dreadlocks suggests setting up camp to avoid waking the horned beasts. The group gathers around a campfire for the night. From a distance, Jawan remembers that the map he found showed a nearby village. Extending his hand, he concentrates golden particles that shimmer around his fist. Near the fire, the men comment that his mono level is even lower than an unadapted player's. The group's leader concludes that he only defeated the beast thanks to his spirit weapon. He recalls that the only way to get a weapon like that is by entering the abyss beyond the branches of the Tree of Illusion. With this, he understands he was only accepted into the group because of the weapon, the same one the demon had said wasn't that good. Lying down, he decides to push the thoughts away for a moment. His gaze turns to the sky and he concludes that this place, after all, is not the Great Realm. Suddenly, 2 figures emerge running through the woods, and he realizes they're getting closer. Mina shakes him, alarmed, warning that enemies are coming. She demands that he grab the sword he was feeding earlier and use it to defeat them. But Jawan calmly replies that he doesn't have the weapon. He explains that he lent it to the night watchman, leaving the girl in shock at his recklessness. Soon, the Red Fox clan appears holding the weapon. They thank the fool and announce they will defeat them before returning to camp. Annoyed, Mino glares at the group and asks if they really want to fight her. Jawan just watches, looking curious to finally see her in action. Moving together, the sea. Land members attack the two of them. Quickly, she leaves a trail of energy with her movement. She hits two of the men at once, unleashing a powerful kick. She strikes another clan member. She spins, wielding several throwing daggers to attack. One of her daggers hits one of the men. Smiling, she apologizes, saying she didn't mean to throw it so hard. Then she floats, surrounded by daggers, and warns them that she's a little annoyed with them. She warns them they're about to face a tough battle. Suspicious of her ever since she attracted all those monsters, the man makes his accusation. He quickly identifies Mino as the Witch of Destruction. He demands to know who from the Black Forest clan sent her. With a smirk, Mino asks if it really matters. She justifies herself, saying chaos is full of people who want her defeated just for beating up rookies. But he laughs, stating the Black Forest clan wouldn't make a move for something so trivial. In the air, his energy daggers shatter. Summoning a spirit weapon, he deduces someone hired her and declares this is the end for her. The girl scoffs, asking if he really thinks he can face her with just that. Responding with a smile, he says he has some extra insurance. Sizing up the group, she realizes they are all first-age adapted players. Suddenly, 50 shadowy figures appear and surround them. With a sharp remark, Mado says it's no wonder she heard so many footsteps. The clan leader assures them that facing a witch and a powerful guy, he wouldn't come unprepared. From a nearby spot, Jawan watches the situation unfold. Thinking it over, he believes he wouldn't have summoned the master if he'd known he could get a spirit weapon. Just then, a black fox appears before Mino, and she teases him about his free time. Introducing himself as Kent, the master of the Red Fox clan. He demands the Witch of Destruction consider this an honor. He then announces that half of the Red Fox clan has come to hunt her down. With sarcasm in her voice, Mino tells John to wait as she's not sure she can face a third-stage player alone. Calling out to the Abyss Warrior, she apologizes. With her back to him, she admits she can't protect him. Without hesitation, she throws a nightmare stone to the young man and orders him to run. Curious, Juan asks what the item is. She explains it returns him to the nearest fortress, stating she only has one. Mino insists that he must use it. Crushing the stone, he thinks that it's only keeping him safer now. Remembering the fallen Yanwan, he laments the stones that couldn't save him. He then wonders what would have happened if he could have given one to his friend. Turning to the girl, Jawan asks if she would go back in time if she had the chance. Confused for a moment, M replies that of course she would. With wide eyes, Xiaowen states that he would never go back. Smiling, Mino says she worked too hard to get to this point. Declaring she refuses to go back, she faces the possibility of being defeated today. Touching her shoulder, he tries to comfort her. Standing right in front of the girl, he assures her she won't be defeated today. Surprised, she doesn't hide her reaction. Leaping away, Mado distances herself from John. Moving quickly, he neutralizes the enemy attacking him. Announcing the Fire King's 14th technique, a black fox charges forward. A flaming strike is unleashed, trying to hit Jawan and his men. With his eye glowing, Jawan reaches the third stage of awakening. Activating Oblivion, he attacks everyone around him. Advancing without remembering the identity the world imposed on him, he moves relentlessly. His fist lands squarely on a clan member. Then a large slash of energy erupts from Jawan, hitting several enemies at once. The attack hits the Black Fox directly. The energy strikes the clan master with full force, spinning around abruptly. The other leader tries to react. Appearing behind him, Jawan shatters his spirit weapon with a single blow. Standing among the fallen enemies, he receives the spirit weapon back from one of them. With it in hand, he attacks the survivors. Gripping the equipment tightly, he prepares to dominate the field. With a powerful technique, he creates a massive pillar of energy erupting from the ground. Watching the scene, Menno wonders how that isn't just a common attack. She recalls the moment she thought he was reckless for handing over the beast's horns. In her memory, her companions commented that his weapon looked like a spirit weapon. Remembering when he lent it to her, she realizes she considered him a fool, oblivious to the danger. Now she understands she was mistaken because he's just too strong. Turning to her, Jan calls out to her. Approaching him, Mayo asks who he really is. With a smile, Jawan throws the question back at her. He stares at her, asking if she's already forgotten. Assuring her that she already knows who he is, he only gets a confused look from the girl. Teasing her about memory loss, he gets H. To call him petty. Demanding the returned stone back, Mino pressures him, but he claims to have lost it. Questioning the stone's price, she orders him to go look for it. Later, a campfire burns in the darkness of the forest. Stretching by the flames, Jawan relaxes. Searching for the stone, Mino complains about giving it to a stranger while a creature nibbles on the weapon. Still calling him a stranger, she asks what he meant when he said she already knew, replying that she already knows who he is. He simply declares he's a human being. Confused, Mino asks what he's talking about, stating that she obviously is also human. Clenching his fist, Jawan says that's enough. Staring at him, she questions his gaze. Turning to sit down, she purrs that maybe he's right. She concludes that maybe it's enough that they are both human. Confirming he remembers nothing before chaos, he answers her question. Envious of this lack of memories, minor events. He explains that many would envy him since everyone ends up in chaos for obvious reasons. Not understanding, Jawan asks what she means by obvious and how she got there. Stopping suddenly, she falls silent. Warning that he'll regret the question, she resumes walking. Arriving at the Gorgon fortress, Mino announces their destination. Suspicious, the young man observes his surroundings. He wonders if this isn't like one of the invitations from the tutorial's first floor. Suddenly, a red energy envelops him. A sudden memory hits him. He again sees people screaming in despair and agony. Commenting on the newcomers, Mino asks if he now understands her point about how she got to chaos. He warns her never to ask that question to anyone there. The screams of suffering echo like a welcome. Welcoming them to the world of the fallen, she defines chaos. She explains that those who graduate from the Tower of Nightmare can be chosen by the gods of the abyss, or they can be chosen by the masters of the great realm. Some of these chosen few achieve glory in battle, but most fail and fall into chaos, the stem of the tree of illusion. Jawan asks if chaos is where those who perish in the great realm go, and she confirms they become part of the tree. Lamenting having escaped the tower only to live among the fallen, he questions what the stem is. Detailing everything, the girl says the towers are the roots. Chaos is the stem, and the abyss is the branches of the tree of illusion. Recalling Muek's words, Jiwon realizes he might not be in the wrong place. Looking at the sky, he concludes he can still reach a higher place. A man in a white uniform appears and shouts for everyone to get to work. He orders them to line up the newcomers and take them to the platform. Tossing cloaks to Jaeon and Mino, he tells them to get dressed and get in line. Approaching a newcomer, he humiliates him for his fragile appearance, asking if he was a webtoon artist. Getting close to him, Mino calls him James. Asking what he's doing at the northern checkpoint, she asks for permission to enter. Receiving an apology, she hears that everyone now needs a certificate to enter, which frustrates her. Turning to Jawan, she asks if he has a certificate, and he shakes his head no. Smiling, Mino decides what she'll do. Approaching the guard, she whispers that she forgot her certificate. Offering a two-horned beast horn as payment, the girl negotiates and he recognizes the item. Clearing his throat, James lets her pass, saying they've known each other for a long time. Blocking Jawan, the officer demands a certificate, but the young man replies that he doesn't have one. Teasingly, Mino says she'd help if he asks nicely. However, the guard insists that no one enters the fortress without a certificate. Understanding the situation, Jaeon approaches her, scaring Mino with his attitude. Desperate, she wonders if he intends to confront the guards to get through. Finding it impossible for him to be that insane, Mino watches as Jawan moves forward and attacks the guards. Shocked, she watches him standing with the neutralized guards around him. Calling for her to enter, Jawan makes her believe he might actually be insane. Running desperately towards James, Mino shouts for him to wait. Confused, a guard asks what's happening. Realizing everything has gotten worse, she despairs even more. Suddenly, the guards stand at attention as he arrives. Introducing himself, Carlton appears as the stubborn inspector of the northern checkpoint and the pride of the fortress. Approaching James, Carlton demands an explanation. Understanding the case, he asks if the young man wants to enter without a certificate, stating that it's strictly forbidden. Carlton listens as Jawan questions the reason twice. Reciting the fortress's legal code, the inspector reinforces that letting him in is forbidden. An aura of energy explodes, forcing all the guards to their knees. Forced to the ground, Mino complains that he used the legal code ability, unsheathing his sword to rest. Rain Carlton attacks, but Mino's daggers block the blow. Saying that's enough, Jawan's eye glows with blue energy. Rising to his feet, he states that he doesn't care about a silly law. Questioning what the certificates actually say, he surprises Carlton by canceling his spell. Concluding that he doesn't need any certificate, Jawan says he refuses to reveal anything about himself. Annoyed by his code's failure, the inspector invokes silver bonds to stop him. Chains of energy erupt from the ground and bind Jawan. Tightening around his body, they seem indestructible, but he shatters them all with his bare hands. Shocked, the guards stare at the feet of someone breaking Lord Carlton's chains. Staring at him, the inspector tries to understand how that was possible. Pointing at Mino, Jowen asks why he can't do the same as her. Lost, the girl doesn't understand the question, referring to the bribe she used to get in. He clarifies. In the memory, James and his men pretend they saw nothing. Desperate, the guard and his subordinates realize they've been caught accepting a bribe. Tossing something to Carlton, Jowen acts before Mino can stop him. Catching the object in midair, the inspector examines it, telling him to accept the item and let him in. Jowen stands his ground. Shouting indignantly, James claims he dared to bribe the inspector and should be detained immediately. Ignoring the guard, Carlton asks if his name is Yahello and he confirms it, smiling. The inspector declares he was waiting for him. The Lion of Nakmyong. A device warns that Mino's spiritual contamination level has exceeded 15%, warning her about the corrupted spirit. Carlton watches her grab an item to recover. Jowen asks what spiritual contamination is, and as she chews, Mino calls him ignorant. She explains it's a chronic disease from chaos that slowly corrodes the spirit. James announces the evacuation of the rookies, and the girl comments on the value of beast horns. She proudly shows it off, revealing the horn is the only thing that can stop the contamination. Teasing. Mino says she got one for free thanks to him. Approaching them, Carlton announces he's going to perform a scan. He points the device at the young man's face, activating its light and sound, but the display shows an error. Unable to measure the contamination, questioning what it means, James watches the screen change. 0% appears as the result. Understanding what this means, the inspector grabs Jowen's hand. As Carlton returns the fallen soul stones, he hears Jowen ask if he doesn't need them, stating that such stones aren't given away easily. Jowen denies being knocked, smiling. Carlton replies that he knows. James looks unsure, asking if he's really going to let him pass. He asks if the young man understands what the foul and soul stones are. Jowen replies that they increase mana. Shocked, James stares at the inspector. A purple energy envelops Carlton's hand, and the guard panics at the stone's effect, confirming with a nod. The inspector explains that only someone from the Nakmyong family can carry them without being contaminated. Saying he doesn't trust him, Carlton states he believes in his soul, even though he doesn't seem to be from the family. Recalling the scan, he assures them the device didn't malfunction. Not understanding, James hears him conclude there's only one explanation. The young man's soul is purer than any other in chaos. Declaring it doesn't matter where he comes from, Carlton states they need someone who can handle the stones. Following the inspector, James asks if this has to do with the Lord's situation, but he says he isn't sure. Stopping abruptly, Carlton turns around, saying it looks like James took a bribe to let someone in. He places the blame on him. Walking through the confusing streets, Jowen complains about the city's maze-like layout. With a crooked smile, he comments on the extra burden he's carrying and minor questions who is leading whom. In a flashback, Carlton warns her to never forget her certificate and forbids bribes. Wishing them a good stay, the inspector just watches as Jowen pulls her away. Walking across a bridge, Jowen calls out to a man, annoyed as he remembers the inspector's ability. He asks if there's any blacksmith who could handle a sword like his, but the man is doubtful. Nearby, a man watches the situation with a curious smile. Someone walks down a dark corridor. Mino hears approaching footsteps. She asks when they entered the city while Jayen asks if she's feeling better. He turns and says it's time for her to go her own way. The girl runs after him, apologizing and outraged that he wants to just discard her. Jawen states she's already helped him enough and would only be a burden now. He turns to face her. Then he says the two of them are different. He then walks away, saying they should each follow their own path. Mino grinds her teeth. The wind blows out the candle flame. The girl dashes toward him, saying, "Gee, he doesn't know the area and could get into trouble." Jogwin replies he can just ask for directions, but she insists she can guide him. He stops and listens. Then he reveals he's looking for a dream demon. She says she knows where to find one and offers to take him, and he accepts, but the young man stops her before they can proceed. He comments that it seems some men want something from them. A group of thugs surrounds them, saying they finally found them because of the sword. Minnow tells them to get lost or they'll regret it, and one of them calls her sassy. The leader approaches and warns her to watch her mouth. He says it's not good to talk like that to the younger ones as Junior is very temperamental. He then demands the sword and a toll payment for them to pass. Jowen ignores the threat while Mino finds the name Junior strange. The leader boasts that they don't know who they're messing with. Mino is indignant, questioning how that man could be a junior. The brute lunges with his axe, saying she said a rude word and needs to be punished. Jowen blocks the attack with a swift move of his sword. The impact generates a massive blast of energy. He stands over the fallen enemy and complains that people there talk too much. Jaewon gets into a stance with his weapon, ready for combat. He taunts them, telling them to hurry up and come at him. The fallen man starts to cry out in pain. The leader trembles with rage, shouting that nobody messes with his precious Junior. He vows revenge, but a companion corrects him, saying, "Junior is still standing." The boss then orders the attack, promising to show them what happens to those who mess with them. Jaewon waits, firm and ready to fight. Mino praises him for the fight and asks about his other skills, but he reveals he only knows how to use his blade. She then remembers someone else who also uses only one skill and questions him about the attack that went off course. The girl asks why he damaged the roof of the building across the street, implying he lost control. Jaewon begins to explain. He explains that while fighting the thugs, someone was watching him from afar with a concealment skill and he wanted to scare the intruder away. Mino is shocked and suggests names for his skill, but the young man ignores her and tells them to keep walking. They arrive at a stall where a vendor greets them. The girl points to the Twilight Forge, the largest in Gorgon, founded by a dream demon. A young man approaches and asks if they've come to place an order. Navin, the forge worker, warns them it might take a while, even if they order today. Jaewon asks why and he explains that the head blacksmith is out and the vice foreman is busy testing the workers. One of the blacksmiths suggests they look at the finished products and the apprentices are mesmerized by a sword. He explains that the weapon is made from the horn of a four-horned beast and just needs a socket for a gem. 2 apprentices eagerly volunteer to drill the hole. The vice foreman, Michael Garnett, says the material is hard to even crack, let alone drill. Then he announces that whoever can make a hole in the sword will be vice foreman for a day. The apprentices try but fail, and one of them even breaks his own hammer. Garnett calls them weak and gets angry that they can't handle such a simple task. Navin regrets not having a chance until Jaewon approaches. The young man tries to stop him, saying he isn't authorized to enter right now. Jaewon then offers to give it a try, and the workers start speculating that he's a traveling craftsman. The vice foreman warns him about the difficulty, but Jaewon points and asks if he wants the hole in that spot. While Garnett explains that most people failed, Jaewon strikes. A loud metallic sound echoes through the forge, surprising the vice foreman. Garnett's eyes widen in shock. Jaewon removes his finger from the sword. He asks if that means he's now the vice foreman for the day, but the sword begins to crack in his hand. Soon the weapon shatters and Jaewon apologizes, saying it broke by accident. Furious, the vice foreman grabs him by the collar, yelling about the cost of the horn. Jaewon reflects that he tried to be gentle. Mino and Navin are dumbfounded, and she questions if that could really be called being gentle. The young man explains that breaking the horn isn't hard. Just breaking it the right way is, and apologizes again. Furious, Garnett questions if an apology will solve the situation. He grabs Jaewon by the collar, shouting about the value of the horn destroyed over a simple bet. The young man offers to give something better in return, but the blacksmith doubts he has anything of value. Searching through his belongings, Jaewon pulls out a 5-pointed horn, asks if this is better. The apprentices are stunned by what they see. One of them identifies the item as a Garnex horn. Jaewon asks if that covers the damages, and the vice foreman, amazed, confirms that it more than makes up for it. Then A young man asks if he can use the forge for a while. Garnett turns around with a serious expression and orders his men to close the door. The apprentices respond promptly and obey the order. The vice foreman invites him inside while Mina says she's going to step out for a moment. A close sign is hung on the forge's door. Garnett introduces the Twilight Forge and tells Jaewon he can use anything he wants since he's the vice foreman for the day. Jaewon thanks him and the blacksmith asks where he found the Garnex horn. He replies that he got it himself. Garnett, shocked, asks if he defeated a 5-horned beast and the young man confirms it. Impressed, the blacksmith listens as Jaewon asks for help making a sheath and he claims to have repaired a few before. The vice foreman, surprised, asks if he really said sheath. He then questions if Jaewon really wants to make a sheath with a 5-horned beast's horn. Garnett takes the young man's sword and asks what's so special about it. He identifies it as a rare replica of the frost serpent's blade made by a dream demon. The blacksmith considers it overkill to use a Garnex horn for the sheath and suggests making a new sword with it instead. But the sword reacts to the horn and absorbs it, surprising Garnett. Startled, he realizes it was a spirit weapon as pieces of the horn hit him. The vice foreman concludes that the sword is possessed by the soul of a higher species and wonders how it ended up there. Observing the weapon, he says that since it's evolving, it will need to be renamed. Jawan asks about the new name and Garnet explains that spirit weapons lose their original names after a major evolution. He warns that the sheath will need to be made from another material, but Jawan reveals he has another horn. Amazed, Garnet watches the young man pull another 5-pointed horn from his bag. Remembering it's a 5-horned beast, he wonders what the young man was thinking. Jawan asks how the blacksmith would like his help, and Garnet replies that he wants to see him work first. Agreeing, he asks how John wants the horn to be shaped. The young man smiles and tells him to decide since he's the professional. Garnet is taken aback, but soon declares that he'll show him the skills of a dawn craftsman. Inside Gorgon's inner castle, a man apologizes to his superior. He then reports losing sight of the target after he defeated the bandits in the street. George and Cheever, Gorgon's prime minister, listens to the entire explanation in silence. The minister then asks how the target got the drop on him, but the man doesn't know. He says that when he regained consciousness, he was already lying on a rooftop. The hooded man simply stared at him for a moment. Jurgjan then asks if this means the target saw him. He concludes that if the target could detect a 3rd-stage player, he must be at least a 5th stage. Therefore, the minister orders his subordinate to gather a team and search the entire city. Alone in his office, Jurgen remains seated at his desk. With a weary gesture, he pinches the bridge of his nose. His gaze fixes on a distant point. With a clenched fist, he mentally addresses his lord. He promises that he only needs to wait a little longer. Meanwhile, inside a tavern, a voice catches everyone's attention. On a large screen, a holographic host announces the end of the weekly program. However, she says the final video is a clip familiar to everyone. Siren then introduces the most talked-about video of the moment, showing the solo clearing of the 99th floor. On the screen, a man covered in an intense energy appears. Some of the tavern patrons wonder what happened to the guy in the video, and one of them claims to have news. He explains that the exploration of that tower was halted, though he doesn't know why. 2 men start arguing about the rumors, suggesting the video is fake and that the guy ran away. Another customer asks the bartender for another 1-horned beer. A wooden mug slams down hard on the counter. Mino appears in the center of the tavern. Everyone present turns to watch across the room. She sits alone on a stool at the counter. A man approaches trying to talk to her. Mino, however, gives him a cold stare and tells him to get lost. He backs away immediately and gives up alone again. Mino wonders why she's in such a bad mood. Stepping on a fallen leaflet, she orders a very strong drink. The tavern keeper watches her as the young woman complains, slamming her mug on the table. Mino complains that the guy is impossible to deal with and thinks he's a big shot. But Claire, the bar owner, scolds her and tells her to stop grumbling since she isn't even drunk. She asks why Mo stays close to him, and the girl admits she's not really sure. Then she slams the mug down again and shouts that she gets angry every time she sees him. The memory of how he destroys everything around him comes back to her, and how he wields his sword as if none of the rules in this place matter. In the memory. John just says that's enough. Mayo admits that half the time she doesn't even understand what he's trying to say. She mentions that he picks fights without knowing anything about chaos. In her memories, the guy simply states that she's not human. Finally, he declares that the 2 of them are different. Back in the present, Mina holds her mug in silence on the counter. She says the guy makes her feel like nothing and scratches the counter with her claws. She yells that everyone worked so hard to get here, but he just showed up out of nowhere. In a memory, Jowan asks if she would seek out a dream creature for revenge. He, however, assures her she wouldn't understand even if he explained. Back in the present, Mino lets out a scream of pure frustration. Claire then places a hand on the girl's head and advises her to stay away from him for good. Mino tries to protest, but the tavern keeper cuts her off. She warns that if Mo stays by his side, she could end up in great danger. Mino asks what she means by that, but a golden light hits the tavern door. The brightness spreads through the room and the girl turns to watch. From within the light, a golden bird emerges and hands her a scroll. She examines the seal and finds it's a letter from Colton Javier, inspector of the Northern Forest checkpoint. Puzzled, Mado wonders why the persistent man would seek her out. Just as a man asks if she is the Witch of Destruction. Surprised, she turns around at the question. With her hand on her dagger, she admits that some people do call her that. Suddenly, a hand grabs her wrist tightly before she can draw the blade. A huge man approaches and says he's busy, asking her to do something for him. Meanwhile, inside the forge, Garned shatters the material with a sledgehammer blow. Right after, he screams and falls to his knees. A gigantic creature appears before him and declares that his presence is not allowed there. Garned screams and asks how he could possibly forge a beast like that. He remains paralyzed, breaking into a cold sweat at the sight of that world. Jaewon then grabs him by the shoulder and yells for him to wake up. He reminds him that they were forging the sword, but the blacksmith just stammers. The creature attacks again, and Jaewon demands that if he's going to help, he'd better do it right. Doublefalt, the horn begins to crack under the weight of the hammer blows on the anvil. Garnet stops, panting, saying he can't go on. The item is just too advanced for him, but Jiao uncovers his eyes, explaining that this is the first stage of awakening. Suspicion, he states that everything depends on how you see things, and the blacksmith's eyes begin to glow with understanding. Garnet's eyelid twitches for a moment, the material on the anvil bubbles, turning into a dark puddle. Suddenly, the substance explodes upward in a violent jet. Jaewon gets hit in the face and asks what's happening. The blacksmith watches the scene completely motionless. The formless mass rises before them and takes the shape of a monstrous creature. The beast attacks, and Jaewon yells for him to wake up. He glares at him firmly and demands that if he's going to help, he should do it right. Garnet panics as he realizes this is the true nature of the five-horned beast. He convinces himself it's all just a dream and that he needs to wake up. Screaming that it's only a dream, he runs toward the creature. Jaewon just sigh at the blacksmith's reaction. Garnet runs in despair, begging for help. His eyes widen in terror at what he sees. Skeletal figures appear before him, and one of them calls him Assistant Blacksmith. Trembling with fear, he hears the creature ask if he's finished forging the item. The skeleton approaches slowly. In a harsh voice, it scolds him, saying he's a fool who doesn't deserve to see this place yet. Sweat drips down the blacksmith's face as he remains paralyzed. He wonders how a place like this can even exist. As he takes it all in, Jaewon drives his sword into the creature's head. Garnet wonders how he ended up in a world like this. The creature lets out a sharp shriek. John leaps and strikes it with a hammer blow. He fixes his determined gaze on the beast. Then he charges forward to continue the attack. The sledgehammer strikes the creature dead-on with a precise blow. The powerful impact tears through the monster's body. Garnet clutches his head and yells, asking why this is happening to him. A voice then says that some things are a pure waste of time, like trying to overcome one's own limits. In a memory, a blacksmith tells Jaewon he should have come to him sooner. He adds that the young man should have sought out the chief blacksmith, the dream demon. Jaewon replies that species doesn't matter. He just needs a scabbard to keep going. But the blacksmith scolds him, ordering him to try 1,000,000 more times since he's still young. The man recalls when Jaewon said he had tried his best for him. He remembers that after mastering every ski, he was 99% certain he could fix any weapon, and it was at that point that a strange thought occurred to him. The blacksmith wonders if in truth he wasn't just running away from that last 1%. A notification appears informing Jaewon that he has reached the maximum level. The young man then asks if the blacksmith truly understands how the shaping skill works. He explains that the dream demon's technique is primordial, something that has always existed like water or fire. Jaewon asks if the blacksmith has been using the skill all this time without even understanding it. Garnet just stares at him in silence, unable to answer. He tries to justify himself, saying he strengthens the tools with mana and shapes the horn through that power. But Jado encounters, asking why the other workers can't use the same skill if it's so simple. The blacksmith then realizes that if the principle were that basic, the others should at least be able to imitate it. The other blacksmiths react in surprise, and one of them shouts that skills are meant to be used. Turning around, Garnet asks if Jahan really knows how shaping works. The young man admits he didn't know before, but he just figured it out and touches the horn in front of him. Under his touch, the horn begins to liquefy and the blacksmith stares at him, stunned, asking how he's doing that. Jaewon then asks everyone to watch closely and describe what they see. One of the men comments that the particles seem to be splitting, and Jaewon warns that the process won't be easy. He explains that all the blacksmith's effort has ended up hardening the barriers of the world he perceives. Garnet wonders if the mistake was trying too hard, but Jaewon states that the problem is with the world, not him. In a memory, a dream demon tells him he did well, but that's just the way of demons. The demon concludes that as a human, he would never be more than an apprentice. The blacksmith questions if this is just a human limitation, but he refuses to accept it. In his memories, he asks Jaewon what he means and if he should fight against the world itself, but the young man replies that what's fair is telling someone they can do something and that Garnet can still fight. He then instructs him to try again, but this time using his own eyes instead of relying on the system. The blacksmith's gaze reflects the image of the creature before him. In that instant, he sees the true nature of that world. Garnet realizes he's in a place with no skills or interfaces. He recognizes it as an honest world free of deception and grips his tool tightly. The blacksmith yells that he still doesn't understand. With a precise strike, he drives the tool into the horn. Outside the workshop, Garnet asks if John is leaving already. The young man confirms, saying he got what he came for. He remarks that the sword seems happy, and the blacksmith asks if he has chosen a name for it yet. Garnet offers to name it, and Jiwon agrees with a slight nod, revealing the name Dokbal. The blacksmith hears the young man ask if it means solitary hero. Garnet smiles and confirms that it seemed like the perfect name for the sword. He says goodbye, and Navin asks the customer to come back again soon, but the blacksmith suddenly calls out to him, asking him to wait. He grabs the young man's cape with both hands. He asks what he looks like in the world that Jawin sees. Jawin turns and replies that he looks human. The blacksmith just stares at him in silence. As the young man leaves without looking back, Garnet wonders if anyone will ever understand his world. Mino asks why Jawin keeps following her, and he replies by asking if she's afraid he's up to something. He presses the question, and she turns around. She gets closer and asks how he found out. Then she declares she's going to kill him. Jawin, however, wants to know why. He suggests that maybe she wants to live comfortably by selling her fallen soul stones, and Mino confirms she's serious. The young man hands her a bundle of clothes as an apology, saying he's tired of seeing her dress like a beggar. Mino asks what he'll do now that he didn't find the dream demon. Jawin replies that Michael told him how to find it, and then asks about the Tree of Illusion and the path to the abyss. She questions why he wants to go there and asks if he doesn't want to know her goal. Mina mentions that those who return from there are called Abyss Warriors, but John states he has no intention of coming back. His answer leaves her completely stunned. Jaewon stops walking, and Mino stares at him confused. She grabs him and demands to know what right he has to do something like that. She accuses him of acting without a care for anyone, calling him selfish and grumpy. She adds that he doesn't even consider the people of this world to be human. She yells that unlike him, she and the others are human, and she finishes by stating that she is human, too. In a flashback, Mino declares she refuses to go back in time, even if SH. He dies that day. Elsewhere, Garnet works hard at his forge. Suddenly, a voice warns him not to get any funny ideas and orders him to lure the young man. Jaewon realizes they're holding a hostage to get to him. He spots the men in an alley across the street, but he decides there's no reason to get involved and rescue the hostage. He concludes that saving people won't change anything. As suspicion reveals the truth to him, he sees a world where numbers and data control everything, and people sell their souls for them. So he crushes a stone in his hand, preferring to lose it and continue his search for the dream demon. Mino yells that this is why he doesn't seem human to her. Jaewon announces he's leaving her as he can't travel with someone who has a goal like hers. She yells back, saying she hopes to never see him again. As he watches her leave, Jaewon thinks that now she finally looks human. He overhears some men talking and discovers the dream demon is with them, but he decides to change his clothes first. Outside, the tavern is quiet and empty. Mino approaches the door and wonders how she ended up back here. She opens the door and apologizes to the lady for being late, but the inside of the tavern is completely trashed, and Menno realizes something terrible has happened. A man with a huge sword comments that he should have stopped her earlier. Lying on the floor, Claire tells him to shut up and says she's going to die because of him now. Gina, the elder of the Golden Sky clan, asks Minho why she's alone and what happened to their deal. She calls him naive and states that Jaewon won't come. She then explains that the reason is simple. He wants to destroy this world. Mina launches an attack with her blades at the men. Ga just smiles and says the witch has lost her mind. He prepares to use his shadow technique and notes that she's only called the Witch of Destruction on the hunting grounds. A shadowy creature appears and he dares her to summon her beast there. Mino dodges one of the creatures. She hurls her blades at the enemy. Gi wields his sword and prepares to counterattack. With a single strike, he destroys Mino's shadow creatures. The man then advances through the remnants of the shadows. One of his subordinates scoffs, saying she looks more like a stripper than the Witch of Destruction. Ya informs her that the walls are soundproof and orders her to stop fighting and bring Jaewon to them. Mino threatens them, saying they will face the wrath of the Black Forest clan, but he grabs Claire's hair and reveals he knows the clan doesn't have a branch in Gorgon. The young woman prepares an ice sword technique. Her attack, however, is blocked by Ya, who calls it a cute little trick. He swears he'll tear her apart himself. Mino just glares at him and calls him a bastard. One of the goons wonders why this scene seems familiar. In a flashback, a voice asks Jaewon if he would go back in time if there was a way. Mino then laments, wishing she could go back in time. As Jana prepares the final blow, she wonders if she would have seen the end of the world if she had gone with him. Suddenly, a bright light appears behind her. Ya's attack is blocked by a mysterious force. Two of his goons turn around, surprised by the interruption. Jawan appears and comments that this wasn't how he wanted things to go. Mino asks if he came to save her. She notes that the clothes he gave her didn't fit. One of the men recognizes him as the guy with the fallen soul stones and celebrates not having to look for him anymore, but Jawan surprises them by asking if they have the dream demon. He demands they tell him where the demon is and bring it to him. Ya wonders if the kid has lost his mind, certain he couldn't take on an entire fortress. Warning Mino to be careful, John says he doesn't think she'll lose. Calling him arrogant, the man leaps forward with his henchmen to teach him a lesson. Without flinching, Jawan just stares him down, preparing for a fight. With a swift motion, he fires an energy projectile at his enemies. Surprised by the sudden attack, Ya spins around. He quickly realizes the kid managed to dodge it. The men murmur, wondering if he's an abyss warrior since they thought he wasn't an adapted player. Recalling the past, Jawan remembers that only a five-horned beast had ever dodged his attack before, but he quickly dismisses the thought, knowing it didn't matter. Suddenly, Mino cries out in pain, screaming Claire's name. She panics, seizing the opportunity. Ya grabs her by the hair and threatens to kill her if Jawan says another word. One of the henchmen tells Claire to shut up and hits her across the face, yelling for Claire to hang on. Mino asks Jawan if they can still save her. Puzzled, he wonders why she's even asking since his only target is the dream demon. Grabbing the kid's cape, Mino tells herself that she's human. Amidst flashbacks, she remembers ordinary people living their lives. Then an intense glow emanates from Jawan's body. Ya orders his skeletal lackey to attack. Crying out for help, Claire is turned into a skeleton. With a determined look, Jawan silently watches the scene unfold. Raising his sword, he summons an intense light. In a devastating blow, he strikes the ground, unleashing a massive explosion of energy. A pillar of light shoots into the sky, tearing through the clouds. The tavern and the entire surrounding area are obliterated by the blast. The beam of light rises in the distance, illuminating the entire city. Startled guards wonder what's happening as they stare at the sky. With a serious expression, Carlton silently observes the scene. He then orders his men to move out. One of Ya's henchmen announces there's a problem. He reports that the soundproof wall has been destroyed and the boss just grunts. As Jawan and Mina watch, one of the guards orders them to surround the bar. Arriving with his men, Carlton asks Jawan what is going on. Calmly, the kid remarks that the timing is perfect and accuses the men of violating their precious legal code. Pointing a finger, Jawan accuses them of violating Article 276, Paragraph 4 of Gorgon's Penal Code. He adds that they are part of a conspiracy, but Mo cuts him off, saying he's the one trying to destroy the world. In a firm voice, Carlton charges them with illegal destruction of private property and kidnapping a resident, announcing they are under arrest. Recognizing the guard's gesture, Jana orders his men to fall back for now. From the inspector's hands, chains of energy form, and he asks if they really think they can escape. Bound by the chains, the men write as Jana curses in anger. Realizing a weapon, Carlton holds it firmly. In a cold tone, he warns them that resistance is futile. Even so, one of the henchmen breaks free and attacks him, but the blow is easily blocked. Amidst the tavern's rubble, Carlton and Ya face off. Their weapons clash in a stalemate of strength and determination. With a precise cut, Colton's blade cracks the enemy's sword. From behind, Ya charges and yells for him to die. Summoning the chains again, the inspector slams them into the ground. The impact opens a colossal crater in the ground. When the dust settles, a hole in the tavern's ceiling is revealed. One of the henchmen, exhausted, surrenders and admits defeat. Calling him naive, Carlton says it was a wise choice nonetheless. Right after, he throws a spherical object towards the others. Upon hitting the ground, the artifact releases a dense purple smoke. The burst of smoke engulfs the entire area. Startled, one of the men is shocked to realize the boss used the black cloud. He mentions that one of his comrades inhaled the gas, and Ya scolds him for not wearing his mask properly. Suddenly, a mysterious voice expresses surprise that he used the black cloud without the Ark's permission. Saleng Hook, an elder of the Golden Sky clan, asks if the Witch of Destruction is really that strong, recalling he wanted to capture her alive. Ga explains it was because of the silver chains, and Kang asks if the annoying man is present. Laughing, he celebrates that the stubborn man inhaled the black cloud, claiming it will be a great show. Suddenly, Seong senses something strange and calls out to Ya. Turning to Jawan, Mino asks who he really is. The kid's sword begins to vibrate, filled with intense energy. With a devastating strike, he dispels the entire black cloud. Stunned, Ya and his henchmen wonder who this kid is and how he survived the deadly smoke. In an astonished tone, the elder states that not even someone from NMON could pull that off. In silence, Jawan watches the scene beside Mino. Then he turns to the newcomers and asks if they are also with the other group. Snapping his fingers, he grumbles about how annoying this whole situation is. Ready for battle, Jawan maintains a serious expression. Reluctantly, he uses an item, muttering that he hates relying on them. The power of Garnak manifests and a monstrous creature appears before the men. Screaming in terror, one of the henchmen asks what that thing is. The beast charges at Jawan, putting him at the center of its attack. The impact of the blow tears through several men, ripping them in half. With steady steps, the kid walks calmly among the fallen bodies. Watching the scene, Xiang wonders if he himself isn't a monster, ordering them to face him. Guy tries to retreat and escape. He stops panting, trying to catch his breath. His eyes fall upon the bodies of Jamong and Jan Mang. He grinds his teeth, unable to accept that it all ended like this. A voice echoes, saying, "There is still a way to get out of there alive." Approaching him, Jawan demands that he reveal where he hid the dream demon. With disdain, Jana replies that telling him will change nothing as long as they let him go. He explains that once the kid discovers the truth, he will wish he were dead. In silence, Jawan stares at him, not understanding who he's talking about, lying on the grow. The man realizes he's doomed and that there's only one way out. Biting a stone of fallen souls, he activates the item he had hidden. Recognizing the object, Jawan comments that everyone here seems to be addicted to drugs. In a distant memory, Mango says she understands why he thinks that. She explains, however, that those aren't drugs, but the only way to contain spiritual contamination. Ga's body begins to twist and swell grotsqually. His face cracks as the girl says that no one wants to become one of the undead. Transformed into a monstrous creature, he unleashes an overwhelming wave of energy. The ground trembles and screams of terror echo all around. Rising before the terrified civilians, the monster faces its victims. In a brutal charge, it rushes into the crowd. With a devastating blow, it throws several people to the ground. Without mercy, it continues its assault, stabbing and killing helpless civilians. The creature's eye glows brightly in the darkness. Then it realizes the world around it has become a desolate landscape overrun by the undead. Lifting its gaze to an entity in the sky, the monster questions the value of dignity in a world like this. Declaring victory, it claims it can now do whatever it wants. Its red eyes meet a pair of golden eyes staring back from the darkness. The creature spots Jawan, calls him a bastard, and lunges to attack. However, the dark tentacles slice through the air, completely missing their target. Motionless, Jawan stands amidst the attack. Untouched, his golden eyes radiate an intense light. In silence, he wonders how humans could even exist in a world like that. The strangeness of the situation makes him analyze the enemy carefully. Even using suspicion, he realizes he can't see the monster's true nature. Still, he decides it doesn't matter and unshave his sword. With a steady motion, he points the blade at the creature. He concludes that in the end, it makes no difference at all. Raising his hand, Jogwin fires a blast of energy. The blast hits the monster square in the face. Thrown backward, the creature's body disintegrates from the impact. Its head falls to the ground completely still. A dark liquid oozes from its remaining eye. In a distant memory, two people run through a snow-covered forest. In the present, Jawan notices it has started to rain. The raindrops fall on the fallen creature, washing away the blood. Little by little, the monster's body turns to dust and disappears. Sheathing sword, he wonders what that creature really was. With steady steps, he walks on through the rain, believing someone from the bar might know the dream demon's whereabouts. Alone, he walks among the wreckage. As the storm follows him, one of the guards warns him not to get closer, but Juin can see that Mino is still sick. Suddenly, another soldier runs toward him, calling for Inspector Javier. Amidst the rubble, a man finds Carlton on the ground and orders the castle alarm to be sounded. Gripping her shoulder tightly, Jawan tries to restrain her. In a weak voice, Mino asks him to put an end to her suffering. She begs him to do it while she can still remain herself. He wraps his arms around her, reminding himself that this woman is human. The image of her smile flashes through his mind, and he doesn't understand why his suspicion falters. He also doesn't understand why oblivion vanishes whenever he's near her. Even so, his hand reaches for the hilt of his sword. He tells himself there's no room for emotions on his journey and that he won't hesitate, but Claire intervenes, shouting for him to wait. She says it might not be too late and that they need to get her to the hospital. Almost in tears, she begs him to wait just a little longer. Under makeshift white tents, guards watch over a makeshift building. Claire asks if Mina will survive, and a voice replies that there's no hope if the transformation continues. Just then, Jaywin hears an alarm echoing throughout the city. A level 4 alert is issued in Gorgon, warning of hostile creatures appearing in the castle. Amid the panic, people run desperately as they are instructed to evacuate immediately. A man approaches a guard and asks where they should go. Suddenly, the soldier's body begins to swell, deforming into something monstrous. Black tentacles erupt from his body and lunge at the civilian. Completely transformed, the guard becomes a creature covered in tentacles. From the monster's body, small winged creatures emerge in swarms. In another part of the city, warriors fight bravely against the aberrations amidst the chaos. A man with long hair and a massive blade watches the battle from a distance. Claire approaches Jae-wan and asks if he's the man Mino was talking about. She accuses him of ignoring the rules of this world and judging who is human and who is not. But he replies that he knows people like her well, as he has met some before. Gently, Claire touches Mino's head and says that people didn't adapt out of ignorance, but out of a lack of choice. Jae-wan corrects her, stating that what they lack is courage. Intrigued, Claire asks what kind of courage that would be. He explains it's the courage to seek higher ideals and a greater justice, and she concludes that this is what he seeks. Admitting she isn't brave enough to understand, Claire still says she knows one thing. Claire states that this is precisely what makes him dangerous. She confesses that although she wishes he wouldn't leave, he needs to go. The tavern keeper explains that his mere presence gives people hope, but warns that the longer he stays, the more miserable everyone will become. In the midst of her pain, Claire grits her teeth and yells that she can't stand people like him. Mino, still weak, opens her eyes and with a faint smile asks him not to give up on this world. Jae-wan then turns and asks one of the guards how much medicine is left. The man replies that they use most of it to stabilize the castle lord and the rest is not enough. Hearing this, Jae-wan orders them to gather all the available medicine. As he watches the preparation, he sees a beast's horn being ground in a mortar and realizes what the substance is for. Soon, Carlton's body begins to convulse, and a guard shouts for him to resist, as not even a three-horned beast can purify him. Juan asks if there isn't a way to reverse the transformation. The captain glares at him and retorts, asking if he thinks they'd be doing this if they knew the answer. Frustrated, the young man grabs the man's collar. He then touches Carlton's face to try and wake him, and the captain scolds him for his insolence. Even so, the man just grumbles as he watches the scene. Carlton regains consciousness, and upon seeing Jae-wan grips his hand tightly. In a trembling voice, he begs him to end his condition, saying that only he can do it. Confused, Jae-wan questions the request, and Carlton cites the article in Gorgon's law, which decrees that anyone whose soul begins to corrupt must be neutralized. He just watches him in silence, admiring his loyalty to the very end. Then he mutters that if he had more people like him by his side, he wouldn't have been trapped in that tower for 40 years. An alarm interrupts the moment, announcing that Carlton's spiritual contamination level has reached 94%. The system warns that he will soon transform as his skin begins to distort. Suddenly, a firm voice orders everyone to stand back. A man in golden armor appears, Jaher, captain of the eradication unit. His presence leaves the captain of the guard stunned. Jaher then rests his hand on the hilt of his weapon and recites Article 1, Paragraph 4 of Gorgon's special law. With a resolute gaze, he declares that according to the law, he must immediately eliminate Inspector Carlton Javier.